Hello, school leaders. Thank you for coming back for part two or key steps for returning to school. Some of you have already started school and either with a hybrid model. Some school districts are actually going back with a remote model. So I think we can be rest assured that we're going to be engaged in either a hybrid model this fall or a full remote model. So we would like to offer you some resources to help you get through this time. And during this unprecedented time, students need our support in creating rich, engaging, and meaningful learning experiences. And when we meet our students in September, we know they will be walking in with unfinished learning. And the first 3 weeks of school are critical to your success as a school leader and your students' academic success. And we're going to share some strategies and actions with you to mitigate the impact of school closures had on our students. Unfinished learning refers to concepts students have not yet mastered or knowledge they will need in order to grasp upcoming ideas. And rather than the negative framing of terms like weakness or learning gap, unfinished learning suggests that more targeted support, students can and will achieve mastery. So we say accelerate, don't remediate. When school returns, grade level content must be an academic priority. Using evidence based practices can help you achieve that. Yesterday, I had a friend of mine come into my house, and we were just talking real quickly about her granddaughter. And her granddaughter just came out of kindergarten, is going into first grade, and she is going into remote learning. And the experience that she had in the spring kind of dictates to what we have to really prepare for coming up in the fall. So basically, when she was in kindergarten, they went home for the closures, and she was given packets, learning packets, and her parents had to go to the school, pick up learning packets, and she had 2 weeks to finish these packets. And then she would turn them in, and they would get new packets and do that. And we know a model like that will not work. So it worked in the spring for a limited time, but you have to make sure that you have a solid instructional framework going into the fall that everyone agrees with. So we structured these videos so you can use them during a team meeting to have rich discussions, to talk about strategies and critical actions. And we included reflection questions and protocols so you can pause the video. We included a decision matrix to help you and your team think about strategies that can be deployed on a moment's notice. And we recommend that you think about your sphere of influence, what you can control and what you can't, and then act incrementally. So today, as we go through part two, we're going to concentrate on the second objective. And again, I just want to introduce myself. Um, Joe Sassone. I've been in education for the last 29 years. I'm a principal and a district administrator, and I spent the half of my career actually working as a school turnaround specialist across the country. I want to reintroduce my colleague again, Melissa Lambert.
Hi, everybody. Melissa here. We're so honored to have this time with you and share the resources during this rapidly changing and complex time. All of our materials and tools are founded in an equitable approach and designed to increase inclusive and integrated instruction. Thank you.
So we're going to look at prioritizing the second bullet here for our objectives for the four-part series. How do we prioritize grade level learning with targeted support that attends to unfinished learning? So this is going to be critical. How do you do this in a remote setting? How do you do it in a hybrid setting when you only have half a classroom? So these are some things that you're going to have to really figure out, plan, and strategize. So the first question that we have for you to ponder and have a discussion with your team is this: is there a shared instructional framework that attends to grade level instruction with targeted support for all students? And does it distinguish asynchronous and synchronous delivery models? So please take some time, pause the video here, and have a discussion with your leadership team around this question.
Welcome back, everyone. So now we invite you to read page 1 of part 2, to pause, reflect, and discuss with your team. We offer this annotation guide to think about what's at the top of your mind when you read this piece, and what squares with your thinking, and what's still circling around. So take a moment now to read page 1 of part 2. Welcome back. Thank you. So, extended school closures are not new to me or to my colleagues who have experienced devastating wildfires in California. The information that we share is based on research and from our own evidence that we've collected with our experiences dealing with school crises as leaders. And even though there's no playbook for what we're going through now, we offer our best thinking to help cope with these challenges and to really think about this as an opportunity of a shared experience. So, the resources that we developed are uniquely designed to support your tier 1 high quality instruction and your instructional theory of action to accelerate, not remediate. So, during this part 2 in our series, we invite you to think quickly about your instructional framework and look specifically at a couple of different things. So, as we learned from part 1, we know that prioritizing grade level learning with targeted support is vital. Our multilingual, culturally diverse students and students who have been particularly vulnerable during this time need an intentional layer of support. So, let's really unpack what that looks like. The framework we offer incorporates research and evidence based approaches and principles that are grounded in remote language learning for multilingual and culturally diverse learners. They're grounded in co teaching, principles of formative assessment, and really deeply thinking about how to embed social emotional learning as well as culturally responsive learning. So we want to leverage and be relevant and responsive to everything that's going on with our students through engagement and through academic discourse. So let's understand first the underpinnings of what we are looking at in terms of instruction and some of the shifts that are necessary going forward. We have to understand the two delivery types, synchronous and asynchronous. And by synchronous, we mean simultaneous whole group instruction where students and teachers interact in real time. And asynchronous, which does not take place simultaneously, students are working independently with some support. Note that they're not mutually exclusive. You may be reviewing a blended model or some kind of hybrid virtual models, whatever the term. It's important to know the factors, emphasis, and activities that benefit each of these delivery types, and that what emphasis we can have for skills, skill building, language, and content development through meaningful grade level academic discourse. For any return scenario you face to support your learners, and we did this through what we called rolling closures, it's a reality. And so the classes and courses that we design must think about the success in communication and the models that have been most successful really have these few things in place. An opportunity to have clear routines and procedures for switching and transitioning between online and in-person instruction, and that students know what to do when remote learning starts. So, foundational instructional components really include a balanced approach to synchronous and asynchronous delivery for all of your multilingual, culturally diverse learners and any learners who are having a particularly challenging time right now in terms of unfinished learning. So those are your learners who will need targeted support. So let's take a look at the first column. This is where we situate in synchronous delivery, all students in real time. There are a few factors to consider. One, we know that affective filters are high during synchronous instruction, and it necessitates really high levels of authentic educator collaboration. And that means um, a lot of time put into place for making sure that common planning time is available, particularly as we think about synchronous learning and asynchronous learning as being possibly one or two teachers. That collaboration will have to be prioritized and absolutely essential. Um, we also know that equitable access is an issue. Joe, earlier you talked about the packets, noting that accessibility is a stumbling block in some regions. That we actually know about regions who have even broadcasts on speakerphones for synchronous learning. So, not mutually exclusive. Really, we're looking at applying a balance of synchronous and asynchronous learning. Let's take a look at the right-hand column, and that's an emphasis on asynchronous learning, where all students work independently. Frustration levels can be high. It does necessitate and require quality review of materials, particularly as they support students in their independent learning. So the emphasis here is asynchronous learning is not time bound, and sessions can be recorded. Students can record themselves. It's a great opportunity to practice L1, first language, and new language. It is really the opportunity to utilize those discussion boards, both the monitored discussion board and grading discussion board, and to achieve the balance. Instruction must be well planned with a high quality instructional sequence that includes responsive, relevant, and engaging texts and tasks. And particularly when you have two teachers or a team of teachers with synchronous and asynchronous time, that collaboration, scheduling, and support will be essential. So in the next slide, we invite you to pause, reflect, and discuss page 2 of part 2 and dig into your synchronous and asynchronous delivery types. And we'll be back momentarily. Welcome back, everybody. So let's take a look at how these delivery types play out in an integrated session with targeted support. So we advocate for integrated instruction with a balance of synchronous and asynchronous sessions that focus on collaboration, support, and communication. Now more than ever, our most vulnerable students must have equitable access to grade level, rigorous, and relevant effective integrated instruction with targeted skill, language, and content support. Provide the maximum support for students while avoiding frustration. So let's look at this model we developed for an integrated session as we follow the arrow from left to right. So first we'll see a whole group integrated time includes all students in real-time synchronous session. This session should be co-planned and co-facilitated with core teachers and specialty teachers, and can be also facilitated by students through Socratic seminars and fishbowl activities, which is really wonderful and exciting for students to take that ownership initiative and ultimately create agency. So as you move to the right of the area, you see the small group, targeted instruction and support. This is also synchronous time. And the most important is that it directly supports that whole group integrated session, that grade level learning that will be essential for all learners as we prioritize an instructional framework. The point is that all of this work, both in the whole group and in the small group, support the rich and rigorous academic discourse that's relevant and really provides learners an opportunity to make sense and make meaning of what's happening in the world today, and strengthen the skills, the language, and the content needed to meet grade level standards. As we move across the arrow at the top, we see independent time or asynchronous time. And this is the time for students to respond to the texts and tasks on their own. And varied support, such as office hours, recorded sessions, and communication can all take place here. And finally, of course, monitoring. Monitoring is required for many students. So think back to those monitored platforms and teachers that have done a really great job in blended learning environments or taking a hybrid approach have spent the time to clarify the processes, the procedures of those monitored boards, and really have put into place opportunities for transparency. So, what information on there will be shared, what information will be monitored, and who has access to that information. All of these will be important as you think about monitoring and collecting valuable communication and multiple perspectives to really add to students' success. So, in the next slide, we invite you to review this resource. It is page 3 of part 2, and pause, reflect, and discuss what's at the top of your mind, what squares with your thinking, and what's still circling around inclusive, integrated instruction with targeted support. And we will be back in just a moment.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we really do hope you had a rich discussion. We hope the resource guide helped you think about an instructional framework to address unfinished learning that we all expect this fall. Um, and despite your scenario for a return, if it's a blended hybrid model or if it's remote, we hope this instructional framework will give you some ideas on how to engage all students this fall. And if you remember from part one, I talked a little bit about some of the learnings from Hurricane Katrina when the New Orleans schools shut down in 2005. And the other piece, not despite the unfinished learning, but was trauma. Families, students, and teachers and school officials all had a shared experience with the school closures and homelessness, um, and the shortage, the economic impact that it had on families, and the food shortages that occurred. And this was a number one need for schools, and we expect that to be the same when students come back this fall. So we really we ask you um, to think about that. And that's what part three is going to be mostly about. How do you embed social and emotional learning, culturally responsive teaching practices for a healing pedagogy? And how do you integrate that within to your instructional framework? How do you integrate it within your lessons and lesson planning? So we hope you join us for part three as we continue this series. We wish you all the best as you go back to school, that you all remain safe. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And then also, if you have if you have any questions, if you need clarifications, please feel free to email myself or Melissa. You can also join us at fosteringqualityschools.com. If you scroll down from this four-part series, you'll see that we are offering reopening services to help school leaders kind of think through some of their strategies, and offering office hours and other resources. So you can take a look at that page also. And please email us for any information, any questions that you have, clarifications you need around this information. So thank you so much, and we'll see you on part three.
Thank you.